Hello, dear friends. Welcome to this program, Our Moments with God, our moments with the Word of God, our moments with the love, mercy, and compassion of God, our moments also with the holy ones of God, the saints of God, and not to forget our moments also with the holy places of God. Like today we are in this church, but I will tell you why particularly. Because today the church celebrates the feast of the dedication of the Basilica of St. John Lateran or St. John Baptist, or both Evangelist and Baptist. And it is always important to turn our attention also to ourselves, and I invite you to be co-missionaries with me by simply sharing the videos with others and asking your friends and relatives and group circles to also subscribe to the channel so that we reach more people. Thank you. So today, although is 32nd Sunday of the year, but it being the 9th of November, every year the church celebrates the feast of the dedication of the Basilica of St. John Lateran in Rome. Now, there are 4 basilicas in Rome, that of St. Peter's Basilica, the most visited one, the Basilica of St. Maria Maggiore, where Pope Francis is buried. Then there is the Basilica of St. Paul outside the walls. And then there is this Basilica of known as St. John Lateran. But this is a very special church, and that's why even though today is Sunday, this particular basilica gets priority as far as liturgy is concerned. And the reason for that is because this is considered the mother church of all the churches, because it belongs to the Bishop of Rome. And this was built initially in its primary shape as a cathedral in 324 by Emperor Constantine. He had donated the piece of land there, and a cathedral at that time was built. Remember, that time it was a cathedral because it was the first church in Rome. Now there are thousands of churches in Rome and 4 basilicas, but this was the first church, and that's why it is known as the mother church and has the most important priority. And remember that even though Pope now lives in the Vatican, still his cathedral is considered this Basilica of St. John Lateran. Of course, I am in a different chapel, but that is the mother church and mother basilica. But there are all the other churches like this one particularly, where we all gather to worship. And this is also an important aspect of our Christian community believers' life. Of course, the Second Vatican Council had also defined church as the people of God. So, while church as a building remains a church as a building, but the real church, as it were, is the people of God. It is only when there are people of God who gather together, then they need a place to pray together, to worship together, to participate in a communal worship and prayer. That's why a church is required, and every bishop or every priest requires a church. So also the faithful require a place to come to pray. That's why we have importance of various churches, and that's why this feast takes prominence over the Sunday liturgy. But one very important thing that comes out in today's liturgy is when St. Paul, in the letter to the Corinthians, speaks about you are that building. And then he says, do you know that you are the temple of God? Your body is the temple of God. I think that's a very big and large claim that Paul is making about making ourselves worthy of letting God abide in us. Why do we go to churches? To pray, because we feel that that is where there is a special presence of God. There is, in the middle of the altar, there is always a tabernacle where the Blessed Sacrament, the real presence of Jesus, is honored, and people come together to worship. People also make holy hours, adoration of the Blessed Sacrament. They also celebrate the Mass, which we do like there at the middle of the altar. So all that is required for us to pray, because we find a special presence of God. But what St. Paul is saying is that your body is the temple of God. Have you made your body worthy of God's dwelling? That's a very fundamental question that we need to ask ourselves. As these days, if you remember last week in the Gospels, Jesus was constantly reminding the people that make yourself friends with dishonest wealth, so that when it fails you, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. Yes, the worldly wealth is certainly going to fail us, because it cannot transport us into heaven. What can transport us into heaven is that when we walk in the presence of God, when we come constantly again and again into the presence of God, where people will come to pray and worship this chapel. When I am not recording, then there are people here praying, and it is meant for that kind of prayer. But what St. Paul is trying to say, and what it means for us, is that we need to keep our body and soul worthy of God's presence. So not only that we try to seek God's presence in holy places, that's very important, but if we are if church is the people of God, and if I am one of those people of God, or one person amongst the people of God, then I need to keep also this church, this place, worthy of God's dwelling. And God's dwelling also means that His love, His forgiveness, His mercy, His word is shared with all people, as I try to do every day by sharing the word of God and reflecting on it. I also invite you to please write your comments at the bottom after watching YouTube, so that the algorithms work in such a way that when there are comments written or likes given, then it reaches more people. So may please take a little trouble and share the videos with others, like and subscribe, and also write your comments. Thank you.